Throw around water. What's going on, guys? Thanks for joining me for another dev stream on this fabulous Wednesday. While you listen to this cool title screen music, I'm just going to set up the restream on Watch Me Work. Watch Me Work doesn't appear to be working. That is bizarre. Well, let the record show that I tried to set it up. Anyways, let's move on to the stream. Also, actually, first, let me apologize to you guys about yesterday's stream. My computer just crashed. And the thing is, sometimes if I go to certain websites, IndieDB being one of them, my computer has this really weird habit of just locking up when I browse the internet sometimes. Game dev, 3D modeling, animation, rendering, it's all good. But as soon as we, go to Google Chrome and explore the interwebs, it just chokes up. Anyways, so I'm going to try to not do that while on stream, as to not ruin this one too. Anyways, what do we have to show? If you saw our Instagram page, I posted this morning. We got our day phase transitions working. Don't know if that sound effect is too loud. My apologies if it is. Basically, we have our enumerator driving our day's cycles and the cool transition between. If we go to our tab menu here, it tracks our day count and the phase we're in. Yep, it's working right. So I'm going to break down what's happening there, and we're actually going to get into some item stash working as well. Item stash was working, but like a few of our other, it's one of the few outlying widgets that used to be working with mouse and keyboard only, and we're going to convert that to work with our, not just our new gamepad setup, but with our new inventory setup, because I did improve upon that as well. So some things might have to get adjusted. Let me just pop out my chat here. Excuse me. Alrighty. So for our skybox breakdown, this is actually set up using, we didn't make the skybox. This is an asset from the Unreal Marketplace called the Ultra Dynamic Sky. Quite flexible and versatile. But we did adjust how it works, and we set up a few functions. We removed several of the functions. I'll just show you here. Let me open up this blueprint. And I'll also open up our game mode blueprint. We're going to need that for our item stash anyways. Let's see here. Inside of general, game mode, and we'll also grab our, the widget isn't anything that fancy. I don't know if you guys care to see that. It's nothing more fancy than our pause menus. Right, so The ultra dynamic sky, it's sort of, oh, I made a backup of the default settings. Basically, on here is an event tick which drives everything. Our dynamic cloud changing, animating that density change, the lunar phase simulation, as well as the actual time of day changes and the set value materials. It's a lot, but the point is that this was all driven on tick. I sort of changed it so that on event begin play, the skybox actually will reference the. Sorry, my apologies, guys. Getting low battery notification on my headphones here. I'm just gonna go and plug them in before I lose audio. This work? Oh, this is the one. Okay, that should prevent me from losing my microphone. Anyways, event begin play, the skybox sets itself as a reference to the game mode, so that no matter what level we're in, if we're using our ultra dynamic sky, um, it'll automatically reference itself to the game mode. And then I have a quick setup, basically get current day cycle. Um, Clicking this will jump to our game mode and look at that function. Basically, all this does is it sets the time of day as to what it should be. This is useful for things that if we're loading between levels and um, if we're loading between levels and we don't have a change of the day phase, but we need to not be in the default time of day, this sort of prevents that from happening. So it's basically just a check. Nothing really too fancy is going here, going on in here rather. Um, check that out. Yeah, and immediately after that, I just call this looping function dynamic cloud change. And inside of here, if we take a look, it's basically the exact same. I didn't really change anything all too much from what was in here, where we animate the cloud density. But instead of having a delay based on that random that's being checked every time on tick, I just set it as a timer by function. Um, and every time this is called, it also calls our dynamic cloud transition, which also is pretty much just this. Um, and all we're doing here is just driving it from a timeline on an event that's triggered by this function being called, as opposed to being called on tick every time, even when it's not changing anything. And the only parts I had to leave on tick, this is just because I believe that these functions and tasks needed to be done on tick. I don't think there's a way uh, to deal with it any other way. But I still feel like the setup has lightened the load quite a bit. And it's also, again, this is unchanged, and same with this is unchanged. But back on the game mode, where we actually call our, day phase cycle, uh, TL for time lapse. Nothing too fancy here. We set a sound cue and we create our widget notifies, which again, that's not that big of a deal. The first thing we do is when we're cycling to a new phase, I just check, is it going to be an overcast phase? And I just do a random check, a 1 in 7 chance if it's overcast or not. And then we execute the transition via a timeline. 1.5 seconds, right, with an ease in and ease out. And this timeline is driving our time of day, right? It's all done through the same lerp. It's driving a time on day, and the time of day changes depending on the day phase going in. So it's pretty simple. Early morning, 6:30, we'll change to the actual daytime. We'll look between it. It's not too complex. I mean, let me check this out. We're gonna need the game mode anyways. After that, we animate a time-lapse effect on the clouds. I was doing this through cloud speed, but it uh, looked a little bizarre. So instead, I basically take the cloud phase, add 10 to its float value, and just lapse between that increment. Um, Here we check if the new phase is overcast. If it is, we set the cloud density and we lerp from what it was to what the new desired cloud density is. And these are done through a random float in range. Basically, um, if overcast is false, we lerp from whatever cloud density was to a random float in range, pretty much within the clear sky range. And this is a range for overcast skies between these two float points. And that only gets called on true. And after all that's done, we check what the time of day was coming in, and we set it to the next preceding phase of what it's supposed to be. And basically, if it's nighttime, if it's a new morning, we set the day count +1. If it has become nighttime, we basically check if the moon phase is equal to 27, which is its max. If it is, we reset it. If it's not, we just increment it so that each night the moon phase shifts to the next value. And then we also check the star density, and I have a quick sort of selection here based on if the moon is, if it's a new moon, so it's like totally blank, the stars are brighter. And if the moon is a full moon in that range, we kind of have the star power to be a little bit reduced, more of its neutral value. And then lastly, we have a random switch basically setting the cloud speed and wisp opacity. So, I mean, you guys, that's pretty much it. And you should be able to scrub through this explanation and grab all these values and hookups if you're curious to replicate it on your own game or your own version of the dynamic sky. If we hop into the game view, I also have the exact same instruction, but done on a, let's see here, an instant. So it's like instead of a time lapse style, it laps between like instantly, which is useful for different scenarios depending on the case of the event that's causing time to change. We may want it to work whichever way we want. But it's pretty cool because we get a change in weather as well. You know, you can have overcast. You could have, see, this is still overcast, but there's still pockets of sky. And now this is like quite pretty much clear with a little bit, and we get a variety of wind speeds too. Usually, it being rarer to get a very windy weather pattern. But it's pretty, you know, to its namesake, it's fairly dynamic. Pretty awesome. And that's sort of it in terms of how we set up uh, the sky and how we manipulate its values. All the variables, again, all the variables that we're pulling from our ultra dynamic sky, our sky reference, they're all default variables. Like I didn't create any of them. So it should be not difficult at all for you guys to kind of replicate this. And if you want to take a look at the instant version of this, it's basically the same thing, except we're not driving it from a timeline. We're just setting everything instantly. But the same logic is there. Instead of on complete, at the end of that top row, we just loop back down to the bottom row. Anyways, I'm going to save the sky blueprint, close this, and what I want to get into now is the item, well, not our item menu. We know that works. Our item stash. So we have this actor here. It was our item stash, and it was actually a perfectly working actor. Oh, I just got a tweet here. Probably gonna share this out. Oh, also, guys, I mean, if you're interested, I did a podcast with my good friend Matt from the Bonus Time podcast. That's up today. So I'm actually going to post to social media after the stream. But it's, if you look at bonustimepodcast.com, it's it's there. You guys can watch it. We talk about Project Grand Vault, game development process, first to entry, all sorts of cool stuff. I'm just going to retweet this. Anywho, it's probably a good time for some coffee. All right. Oh, what's up, Julio? How's it going? Weed? Thanks for tuning to the stream, guys. I really appreciate you checking it out. I just finished covering the Skybox breakdown, and now we're going to get into updating the item stash. Let's see here. So we have our item stash actor. This is the same one we're referencing in World. And right now, this actor does technically work, although it was only, it worked fully functionally before, but it was using an older version of our inventory / item structure, and it was used only with a mouse and keyboard setup. So, for example, like we can go here and we can access it, and you can see it's still capturing our mouse. And the idea was we could click items in our stash or in our pack, and it would switch to the stash, and vice versa, and it would free up our pack capacity, right? That's cool, but as you can see, since we've switched our item setup, it's not really working all that well. So we're gonna finish or begin and hopefully finish on the stream the conversion process for this. I do want to update this a little bit and implement a categories of sorts. Is this replicated? I'm sorry, Weed. You're gonna have to give me a little bit more details. I don't exactly understand what you mean by that. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay, so from our actor stash here, in the event graph, we interact with this actor, and we are basically, we animate the lid to open, which is a small, little nice detail. We end the interaction here, and we open up our item stash widget. So this is the menu system that we interact with. And you can see all of these buttons here were all the Unreal Engine default button types using click events, things like that. Almost positive that's the case. If I go to the event graph, we can see a few custom events and on click, button up. Yeah, so we're gonna have to replace all of those with our more current setup. Are you making this so what server does the client can see and what the client can't see? In terms of client, you mean the player? It's a single player game. So they would see the game screen. No, we're not doing online. This is a single player adventure type deal. I actually do want to make multiplayer, but it's exponentially more complex, and not something I wanted to tackle with this project. Yeah. Single player, immersive, story driven kind of adventure with some RPG elements. But ultimately, I'd like to take what we've got here and expand it and make it multiplayer. I'm actually glad to get so much support by people hating that we don't have online. That's so funny. Okay. Warms my heart, guys. Anyways. Let's close these functions out. And we have a few actors, a few variables here in our game mode. Things like item stash and item stacking. This is what was previously being used to handle our stash, our item stash. But we're going to have to change this up. On our interaction menu, on our item stash actor, I'm just going to go to the parent, interact test 0. Let's hop in here and see what's happening. This is driving our widget signifier for interaction. gives us our notify sound. One thing I do want to do here is create a new variable. We have one for page for dialogues. What I do want to have is a new integer called actor phase. Excuse me. And I hear you, Weed. I enjoy some multiplayer myself. You know, why not both, guys? Why not both? You can enjoy all types of games, except for maybe racing. I don't really play much racing games. Maybe F-Zero back in the day. Let's see here. Okay, so with that new actor phase variable, what I'm trying to do here is create a similar setup to our interact tier 2, where we need to limit this input event. And basically, if we kind of make some space here, shove this down a little bit, what we want to do is switch on integer, and we want to switch on that phase. Actor phase, and by default it is 0, which is cool. Let's tidy this up a little bit. We're not going to want a default bin at all. Starting at 0 is fine. Typically, this is going to require 3 phases, but 2 because of 0. Excuse me. Let's just right click, add a pin. And add a pin again. So, on 0, we want to basically come through here, execute like initializer interaction. And as soon as that initialization is done, we kind of, I want to say right here, we can set phase to 1. The idea being we're going to lock our ability to interact with this object directly until we reset this to 2 or whatever is desired. Most likely, we won't even need the 2. I think we're going to call the end event from our menu. But before we do that, we are going to need to set a reference to, actor reference already set up. Beautiful. Okay. So what I was just checking for, guys, is to make sure the item stash widget we're creating has a reference to this actor itself. And it does. Because we want to be able to call events like event, child, and execute from the widget. Right? The idea being you can completely stop interacting with this actor from this menu. Anyways, you can see that this item stash has kind of like an error on its blueprint. So this is something we need to fix first, and once that's fixed, we're going to start testing this in the world, but we just got to clean this up. So what do we need here? Initialize design. Let's replace these functions. So the way the item stash was set up was we had 2, it's kind of hard to see with the comments, but if I zoom in, you can see a bit better. We had a stash setup custom event and a pack setup custom event, and those are both called on construct, along with our intro animation. And that's, we set up the characters inventory and the stashes inventory. So what I did was I simply copied and pasted the stash setup function from our, I closed it, but it was from the item menu on the character's pause menu, because that's essentially the same. We want to see what the character has in its inventory. Oh, Greenwood, thanks for commenting and checking out the stream. You're saying check out your profile on ArtStation? I'd be happy to. Is it under the same name? I will quickly use my snipping tool and grab that for later. So I get that reminder. I'll check it out off stream though, if you don't mind. Yeah, for anyone who's just tuning in for the first time, this isn't exactly a tutorial, but we usually figure out what we're working on. So it's a little rough compared to a pre-recorded, pre-planned, already figured out tutorial. But I appreciate the company and you guys tuning in. It's awesome. Let's see here. So on our item stash widget, let's clean this up. We get the day count. We're gonna need, to be honest, we don't need a day count when we're interacting with our item stash. So we're just gonna get rid of that. Let's control click, move this over here. And our scroll box is going to be different as well. Let's find out what that is called. Scroll box pack. Here it is, highlighted for us. So we can drag that right on top, and it'll replace it. I see an error. Let's compile and see what it says. Okay, that's cool. Now here we have a reference to our active character. It's giving us an error. That's because on this widget, the reference is called an active character reference. So you'll just replace it as well. When you compile, that error should go away. Active character reference is here as well. Let's grab this and, oh no, you know what, let's do it this way. Grab a reroute node and plug those into, yeah, nice and easy, cool. And lastly, reset focus position to 0. For now, we will get this completely. We're just trying to set this up in its basic form. Still have some errors, mainly because haven't exactly decided how we're going to calculate this for our HUD, or sorry, our item stash, because this was the stash setup custom event. I want to say we should be able to use the exact same type of flow. We also don't need this here at all. We're not getting anything out of it. We'll probably make use of it over here, right? Cast a game mode. Get the game mode as a reference. I'm just going to quickly scan through here to make sure if I delete all of this, it's not totally destructive in terms of things we may be able to leverage or that we actually need. Item stash button. What is the item stash button? It is a super old, ugly widget. Okay. I'm actually trying to think right now as to why we need a special widget for the item stash button. Why can't we use an inventory button? I mean, it was kind of identical in terms of data. We have an icon, text, and a quantity value. So I'm just going to reuse the inventory widget. Let's close our parent actor. Get back to our item stash widget here. Over here, we just said item in stash. Yes. I'm going to preserve this. Come on, let's get all those elements. Gosh, this guy doesn't want to cooperate. Okay. Let us delete all of these. So this is vastly more simple than what we had here, and that's because a lot of the item stacking is all set up on our character, as opposed to on our menus, which is how you want it to be. It's how we're able to have widgets that are so light. Okay, so cast to game mode with actor for reuse. Let's get rid of those. We get our day count, which is not really necessary. Oh shoot, you know what, let me undo that. Let's see what we can initialize design. That's fine. We actually don't want that. We just need this. We are going to have to do some. We're going to have to add some functionality to our game mode blueprint in order to make this work. So the first thing we got to do in this conversion is, well, we want to clear the right scroll box, which would be our item stash. Scroll box stash. Perfect. Let's grab this guy here. Replace that. Beautiful. Update inventory on our main character. Not necessary. We're going to need a function like this for our stash, though. This is what I was talking about earlier. I guess those should be commented, but... Okay, so this is our character, our main character parent, and this is the function that updates our inventory. Unreal wants me to check it out, so I will to make it happy. Checkout selected. Yes. That is what I want. So, this I want to see if we can just copy and paste this kind of wholesale. It does have some local variables. Are we using this? No, it's kind of like a wasted variable. Shoot, let me delete that. We are using this stuff for sure, right? Yes, okay. So what I'm going to do is, well, let's save and compile. Sorry. What I want to do is basically duplicate this into our item stash, onto our game mode blueprint, which is handling the game's the player's item stash, because we want to be able to basically track the capacity of these values. So I'm actually going to bring this down here to my other monitor so I can kind of cross-reference and check against my previous work a little easier. And I'll move the chat down here so I can see if anyone's saying anything that needs to be addressed. Okay, so update inventory on. Yeah, obviously this is not working for us. This one is fine. So on our game mode, what we want to do is create a function and call it update item stash. And what we're going to have here is, let's make a new category for this. We'll call it the item stash category. Item stash handlers. I think all we need are these two. This is a stacking, so we have a number and item stack, so that should work perfectly. What we want to do here is grab our item stacking struct. It's called item stacking game mode. And what we want to do is break this structure. And you can see inside the structure, it's basically just an array of numbers and an array of of our item structs. So it's kind of like Inception, structs within structs. What we want to do is clear both of these. Clear and clear. And this is because, I'll just grab the comment from the character blueprint. We're clearing the data so we can accurately track our stacking. The reason why stacking is important, for those who don't know, in Project Grand Vault, we have, the item system is similar to, I would say, Monster Hunter, where we have a bag that has slots. For example, right now we have a 5-slot bag, and you can see that certain items can stack and certain items can't. For instance, the energy canteen won't stack, but things like, things like these alloys, they'll stack, but our canteen won't. And that's kind of why we have to track our item stack, because our character's inventory is where we're dumping in all of our item classes, but we have to track what's in there and how those actors are actually consuming our character's bag space, so to speak. Anywho, hopping back over to the game mode, we want to, on execution, the first thing we want to do is clear these two variables. And then immediately, we go into a for each loop. Whoops. For each loop. We don't want to break. We want a for each loop for our item stash itself. Let's pull that out here. And I'll add a little comment. This is here for the item stash. And what we want to do is basically check for stacking. Check each item in here for stacking. So we're going to actually need another for each loop with break. Excuse me. Right click, for each loop with break. What we want to do here is, for each item, we basically want to check against our item stacking array. Let's shove this over here. Yes, somewhere up there. We're getting a little bit of space. We're checking for item stacking. And for each item we're checking against, we want a branch. And the condition is basically, is it a, well, let's break. Let's break our item type. And we're checking if it can stack. After that, we do another check here. I'll just copy and paste more of this. We're checking if the item names are the same. That's basically how we're identifying if things are meant to be stacked. So we check the item name of what's already in our stacking array and of the item we are actually looking at from our initial loop. So we're going to break item data here. And it's the same struct because they're both arrays of the same item structure. And it contains all the data we need. Our next check, and this is where things get a little confusing. We're checking if that stack is at capacity. And this is done by, we are checking the, sorry, I'm actually going to copy a little bit more, because I don't want to just miswire these. We're checking if the item is at capacity, and if it's true, we update the array element. However, how do these connect? So our index from our set array element connects into our array index. And then we come down here to, that's already hooked up, beautiful. So right here, we're checking if the counted value in our, inside of here, we're checking if that counted value is less than the max stack. If that's true, if it has space basically, we can update this. So from here, we want to, our target array is, let me get over here, this guy. We actually have a use for him, finally. I'll shove that up top and move this out of the way with some reroute nodes. I'm just using the arrow keys to slide these over so they're neat. And that is also the array value we're getting for our check. So from here, this is another true check. And that should sit like so. Right from this position, so if that's all true, we immediately break our check for stacking, because there's no other need. All we're doing is making sure that that value, that item, can stack. So we can end that loop process. And I'll just slide this over here. And okay, that is cool. Next, let's set up all these false values. Basically, if it's false, we are simply just setting the item stack variable to, well, we're increasing it. And this variable, we have to remember, is a local variable. It doesn't have to be. It's only used basically inside of this function. Item stack. That is how it's set on our character. It should be just as useful on our game mode as well. Let's replace this. Whoopsies. We can do that replace function that I like to do when we're replacing local variables with normal variables, because sometimes references do not get reset and it'll cause a conflict. In any case, if all the false values get set here, and we're basically, if any of these checks provide false or check for false, we are simply increasing the item stack by 1. So let's just hook those up like so. And this guy too. That is correct. And then the final part of the loop, the final part of this initial loop anyways, we grab our completed. So once this check is complete, we are doing another branch based on the length of our array. And which array? It is this array, the item stacking. So we just want to kind of pull this out here, grab the length, check if it's equal to another integer, and the integer we're checking, item stack. And no matter what case that is, we are resetting this to 0, so we can begin rechecking the count. And after, so make sure I'm hooking up these right. Yeah, the array we are adding, if it is equal to, is our add. So we add a new item, and the item type we are adding, here's where it gets a little confusing. The item type we are adding is our initial item class that we're checking against. Let's try to make this as readable as possible. Alrighty. So, and after all of that, after done checking the entire inventory and finding out its slot values, basically, all we're doing here is updates our pack capacity. Strangely, our item stash doesn't have a maximum capacity. If we look at this exact same function we replicated from our character, the final thing we do is update our character's maximum inventory. Or sorry, we update our basically the readout on our pack, which would be, it would be this number here. So we have our maximum and our current, and we would update that to reflect what we just calculated against. However, on our item stash, that's not necessary. The stash has unlimited space. It's a magic box, as per video games. So I don't think there's anything much to pull from here. Let's see here. Item stash. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anything, guys. No, that should be it. Let's compile and save. So now we have our function. So let's save all of our elements. Control Shift S, and once everything's done updating and saving, we can continue. So inside of our widget, we were, update inventory. So right here, we want to, from our game mode reference, we want to update item stash, execute our newly created function. And then we execute a loop. And what we're checking for here is, well, this was copied from the other side, but we were basically getting our stacking struct. But we don't want our stacking struct from our active character. We want it from our item stacking. Oh, item stacking. Excuse me. And we want this. Well, let's break it. Yeah, there's two options. You could break a struct like that, or you could just expand it. If you just hit, if you hit the right-click the node here, and it doesn't have anything linked in, you could just split the pin, and then you would get this kind of look. I guess they do the same thing. So I guess we'll just keep it the same. From here, it should just be a matter of control clicking and replacing these links, I believe. So we can delete that reference here. Our active character is referencing which character we're using, and this is basically to get our slot color for focusing on these items. Now that should be fine, I guess. We can keep that set up the same. In fact, we could just we don't need to actually cast it that, because we get that here, and then we're getting it again from our character. It doesn't really make any sense to me. What makes more sense is to just get the reference we gathered earlier. Excuse me. Gosh. Gassy. My apologies, guys. How embarrassing. Let's do the same here so that we can get our focusing color as desired. We can delete that. And where is this last reference being used? Again, on our pack capacity. So as with previous, we shouldn't really be needing any of that. This is checking, is our bag at capacity? If it's not, we generate some void slots in there. So because we don't need those, I think it's safe to delete it. We can get rid of this too. Now what we want to do is make sure we're referencing the right stash tab. So if we compile, we should have a happy blueprint. Almost there. Almost there. And refresh stash should toggle right here. Could not find. Oh yes, of course. Of course you can find that. It doesn't exist here. Also worth noting, our pack. We'll keep this for now. The void slots for our character. At least it's consistent. I don't think it's bad that it's there. Anyhow, that should make our blueprint nice and happy. Now down here we had our backed up data that we were using. This may be useful in case we have, once we start adding our functionality, we may be able to leverage some of this. Anyhow, we need to make it so that we can control this blueprint a little bit at least. So I'm gonna make some space here. Let's scroll this down. Oh my god, it's taking forever. Let's move this way down here. Event on tick we will need to make use of. So as per our other widgets, we're gonna make use of that event tick. It's not ideal, but it's what I think is necessary for a gamepad-driven menu on Unreal Engine 4. At least doing it the blueprint way. Oh man, this song actually gets pretty cool. I haven't listened to this so long before. Actually, I don't even know. I haven't checked with you guys. Can you hear the music in the stream? Let me know. Hopefully this whole time I wasn't being drowned out by it. Okay, on event tick. This logic is used on all of our menu elements. So I'm just gonna pull it from any menu really. Let's go to our pause menu. And we're probably, doesn't really matter which one at this point. Yeah, let's just grab our pause menu, jump in here, grab some of our logic in the event graph. Excuse me. And, oh yeah, this is, why is it like this? Why did I do that? Okay. Not going to grab it from here. I don't like that setup. How it's a collapse node. Not as flexible. It still works. It's ultimately the same thing. But what we're going to need is this and face button right. The initial check for functionality I want to be able to do is the ability to exit our menu, to get in there and get out, and make sure our applied focus is working as it should. Okay, so let's do a get player controller. This right here is screen for now. We don't know how, what size of sequence we'll need, but for now we're just going to branch, and I'm actually going to pull that comment box from the item menu. A retriggerable delay. Actually, all this stuff is good. Remove from parent is good too. So we'll Control C and Control V that into our widget item stash. Did it paste? There it goes. Rightio. So from our player controller, we check if the gamepad face button right, that on PlayStation is a circle button. Can't hear the music at all. Hey, Julio. Isn't that funny? Okay. I've increased it quite a bit. Let me know if this is offensively loud. I appreciate you doing this for me so much. Okay, so yeah, as soon as we hit that button, we want to exit, remove from parent. And if I think about this a little bit, we want to, as soon as we exit the widget, right, we want to also end this whole interaction. And I believe we should be able to just get our actor reference and call that end child event. End child event execution, is that right? On our actor and child event and child execution, that should work. But in our parent, there's it's actually something else we should be referencing. It should be just end interaction. And I think that should allow us to get in and out of our menu. Using the gamepad anyways. We could also just set this up here with also our left alt. So then our keyboard, would also work. Let's remove this pin and remove this pin and hook up both, or rather. So either or would work. Let's save and test that out. So again, we probably won't have any functionality inside, but we should. That default time of day is going to kill me. From here, we can get in and we get out, and we have our full character functionality. So let's test picking up some items and going into the item stash. Doesn't work a second time. And the reason why is because our item stash never resets that. This event chain that gets called, of all the things we want to reset, doesn't call our actor face, which is something it should do. So yeah, set that to 0 as well. Looks like we didn't need any of those pins after all. Anyways, let's grab those items, go to our stash. So yeah, our pack is generating its inventory fairly well. And if we exit, it doesn't play our exit animation, but it works. And it works multiple times, which is neat. I actually like the animation. Is there no exit animation? Did I never build one? I guess not. Couldn't you just reverse this out? Yeah, why not? Let's use a reverse animation, which is pretty cool. So all we have to do is end interaction. We'll just call the exact same animation. And just play it in reverse. That should get us there. And the delay for this animation, the length is 0.5. looks correct. Let's put a delay here for 0.5. Cool. So our menu pretty much has some functionality restored. I mean, it's a clean blueprint, and it's working in the sense that that's pretty cool. Yeah, it looks good. Yeah, visually, I want to update it a little bit more. I also want to add some functionality to this stash menu here and update the visuals. Obviously, we want to update our old style types, but these are going to have to get updated because this is a mouse-driven menu. So we might actually just delete this whole element and pull a item selection from our shop menu, perhaps, in terms of deciding quantities. And with regards to this space, I want to be able to not limit, but for our new item system, we've developed the ability to sort our items in our character's pack, as well as extract items from an inventory array based on type, because we've seen this demonstrated on our shopping actors. Whenever we went to the junk shop and went to sell items, it only grabbed, I think, treasures, materials, and monster parts. So my logic is I want to kind of combine both of those features and allow the stash to kind of, well, to essentially always be sorted, but also to kind of have these tabs where we could have stash hunting tools, and all your hunting tools in your stash would be displayed there, and then you could maybe hit R1 or a shoulder button signifying left or right. It doesn't matter really. And then we would be able to go to the stash for restoratives, or stash for furniture, or stash for monster parts, treasures, whatever the case is. Whatever you're storing, you could go to the appropriate section. Which it does increase the complexity, but we're just adding features and we already have. Like, in a sense, I believe we could just copy and paste blueprint code data around and achieve that with relative ease. But what I'm wondering is, yeah, I want to minimize the length of scrolling. It's going to get kind of crazy. Okay, let's save this and begin to create. So this is a horizontal box, which is kind of perfect, to be honest. We'll call this stash header. I'm going to collapse this. Collapse this. I want to hue shift this a little bit, so it's just a little bit more orange, like the stash box itself. Let me bring down the brightness. Cool. Yeah, that seems neat as an accent color anyways. Okay, so we're getting a whole bunch of text boxes. I think 2. I think we're going to need 2. The idea is we have a central stash where we're looking right now, and this might say stash item type. What's the longest? Good question. In terms of space we have available, I want to make these less visible, or sorry, so they're more in the background, as in sort of alluding to that you can go to those sections next. And that would probably be best done on the color and opacity. We could drop the opacity down a little bit to something like 0.4, maybe even 0.2. Basically, this would say previous, and this would say next. And these would all be sort of dynamic. It will be bound to a variable. 0.2 for here as well. I don't want to call this current. I just wonder. Based on not our start menu, but our blueprints. If we go to not structure, go to inventory items and check out our enumerator. We have all of our types. The longest one here is hunting tools. So this should be a good measure. If that coincides there, everything else will be good to go. If I could type. Right, so this is pretty large. Could we reduce these to something like 20? Oh, not that high, 28. And go here, 28. And we have kind of this effect where, you know, maybe we don't even need to have the word stash here, to be honest. But this is the largest it would ever be. And it would say current, and you would have the previous and next text there, and it would, you know, this could say hunting tools, right? And then you know, oh, okay, so this one is next. And you could use your left and right inputs to switch types in your stash list here. Now that that's there, I just want to lower this a little bit more. Maybe even 24 would be better. Okay, so before we get into organizing by type, let's see here. I guess the simplest thing to do would be let's add the ability to focus. We need to determine whether we're looking at our pack or our item stash. And we're going to need a visual signifier for it. I wonder if we could, and before it was kind of easy, we just had mouse events. You could just click on whichever one you want to switch over. I wonder if we could use the pack list, potentially, and make that like a bright color, you know? Like if you're, oh Jesus, no, not that. Not that at all. Not the content color, but the brush color, rather. And sort of, you know, if we're focused on this, perhaps we could... Oh my god. I'm trying to think of the easiest way to do this, to add some... What's happening is we have our base color, and all of these objects are basically transparent. So when we change the base color, we're changing the background. And I don't particularly like the idea of changing it so it's like this, or I guess you could desaturate it even, but slightly adjusting the whole thing to apply focus. I would rather have focus applied to the border. Potentially, we also could apply focus to this, the border pack background brush color. And the background would, well, maybe not that bright of a color. Let's undo that. And what I want to do is grab a reference to this. Getting kind of full here with all these extra colors we don't exactly need anymore. Just open up some space. I mean, I guess alternatively, could we expand this? No, you can't. Whatever, let's just empty out some space. Okay, cool. Let's reset that. But what I want to do now is test if, now that we have this kind of selection highlighted, if we adjust the hue and set the saturation to something like, I don't know, 50, we don't get a proper signifier. If we bump up the value off of pure black to 0.1 even, could we get valid feedback from that? And does it look horrendous? That's also important. I mean, I want to strike a good balance between something that is functional and also, I mean, ideally pleasing to look at. Yeah, so if we're focused in that, the background color could change. You know what? Maybe that can work. Maybe that can work. One thing I do want to do or address, let's close our item menu and reset our background color to that default. I want to adjust our initialize design. A useful function that I have almost on all of the widgets that need to be personalized depending on who's using it, or I mean which character is active. So we can initialize design from here, open that up, and we would be able to set things like our color gradient grab a reference to that, drop that out here, and you know what? I kinda... Oh no! Oh, I knew it! Sometimes when you're editing widgets, Unreal will crash when you switch to your viewport. I don't know why that is, but it was a risk. And I have yet to determine if control tabbing will switch to the widget you were, well, like, will avoid that problem. I don't know if it's my machine or what. My machine. Anyways. So, let's type this in. Was editing a widget blueprint. Click tab to switch to level viewports. Then crashed. An intermittent issue. Maybe with our detailed description, the engineers and techs at Epic can improve the engine stability. So let's send and restart. And in the meantime, change your computer? Oh, I wish it was that easy, Julio. But you know what? Some people have computers that can't even open Unreal or Unity. So I feel pretty grateful to even have this machine. Until it breaks, I won't buy a new computer. What's a much bigger issue than Unreal stability in terms for crashing? Because, you know, engines are kind of, they're delicate. Game engines, it's quite common for them to crash. I mean, back when I was in school, they would always say, like, always save, because engines are way more finicky when compared to things like 3ds Max or Maya or whatever. But what I was saying was, what's more of an issue for me personally, is not being able to browse the internet and my whole computer crashing, like blue screening. That's weird. If anyone listening has that problem on Windows 10, let me know if, like, that's interesting. I wonder if it's just my machine or if it's... I want to find out the problem. Okay, let's go back to our developer room. And... okay, and we're back here. We can quickly use Control B, find our actors in the content browser, and it's gone over here. Now we should be able to grab our widgets from here. It's so awesome to just, I don't know, when you have a game project and you have to scroll through the content browser, it's such a pain. Like, I love being able to use Control B and hop around and get references to open and find other blueprints. Anyways, we are here. What we want to do is, yeah, let's reset that color. Sorry, go to our border. Our color was, is that the right one? Strangely, this order seems to have flipped, but that is the right color. So let's go back to our development room, or our content browser, and grab our pause menu. Or sorry, I guess our item menu would work. And what I want to pull is the code from our initialized design on here. Basically, where we have our color gradient and we apply these specified colors depending on what's going on. So kind of just want these two, to be honest. And then we can hop back in here, go to our initialized design. And what we're going to need, well, we already have a reference here. We don't need to expose it on the function. We'll just switch on active character. And move that over and hook up green for Vance, blue for Maya. Bada bing, bada boom. We're good. Oh, silly. We did not get our color gradient. Color grad stash? No, we want our, let's be certain of what we're grabbing here. We want this dude. Hook that up like so. So now our accent colors should be customized based on who's accessing the stash. Also, worth noting, and I'm probably going to have to clean this up, I'll do it outside of the stream, but there's a lot of old functions that aren't necessary here from the previous iteration of how we've set things up for the gamepad and the old item stash, or sorry, the old item structure. So yeah, a lot of useless functions, kind of crazy, even a few variables too. Anywho, what we want to do is basically from here, let's close our functions. Transfer to pack, transfer to stash to pack, pack to stash. We're going to leverage these functions, but we have to get there first. We need the ability to focus on items, focus on which item box we're accessing. In terms of, are we accessing this? Are we accessing this? Where's our focus, right? Let's close those up for now. Get pack capacity, like get item name, like geez. How should we handle this? We have our on construct. I'm going to disconnect this. And what I want to do here is let's check for if breaking this event, it should, I want to say our functionality should be preserved. But before I delete it, I just want to check. Oh yeah, that's cool. And we still have our customized colors. And if we exit, nice. Cool. Also, this morning light is not something I want to see all the time. And to resolve that, I'm just going to go to our game mode and set the default daytime. Shoot, where is it? Blueprints? No, sorry, general. Jeez, brain fart. Let's hop into here. I believe we should just be able to set our default day phase. And if we set this to daytime, we should always spawn in sort of at the daytime. Sweet. That's cool. That is what I want. Let's close the game mode. And close the item stash. Yeah, maybe for now. Maybe I'll just pull up my other monitor just in case I need it. Try to keep this area a little focused. Grab the wrong one. Sorry about that. Let's delete those. And our first check is basically a left or right input. So in terms of our sequence here, we'll actually have to drop this down a little bit. Kind of working downwards. I'm going to change the song. Okay, so here we are. Let's shove this guy over and go to our excuse me. Switch on int. You know what? Upon thinking about it, switch on int. Upon thinking about it, I think this, similar to how we have an actor phase, we should have a menu phase. Like, oh, we don't need this here. I want to promote this to variable. Whereas previously we would have, are we not in the discard phase, right? I think maybe going forward we're going to use an integer and that phase setup. I'm going to call this, it's called widget phase, sure. And by default, well, it's not going to have a default, first of all. It is going to have just numbers, and by default, it's going to be at 0. Let's compile and make sure that's the case, and it is. So, phase 0, which is basically our, sequence. This phase is basically our, let's rename this sequence, or add a comment to it. Let's call it our select scroll box, sure. And I think I'll use three things to check against. One is, are we exiting our menu? And the other would be, well, the other two would be an up and down input. And we should be able to just grab those from our item menu. It's a little intense, to be honest. Left and right, maybe? Yeah, left and right should work better. What we're gonna do is good gosh, okay. These are intense. So right here we have focus up. This is not correct. We want to focus left. Basically focus, excuse me, not caps, what stash. Oh no, focus pack is left. And it's checking for input left. I have to move this out of the way. Bring this out here. And we would also be checking not just D-pad left, but the W key. Grab our OR and rewire that so both of these work. And hook that up like so. Focus pack. We need an index counter as well. Quantity to sell, quantity to... Let's see if any of these are not being used. If we can make use of my poor practice from an earlier version of myself. Yeah, this one, item stack. No references found. Yeah, that's fine. No, it's a little confusing because we just made an item stack integer variable on our game mode where we're updating our stash inventory, but this is a different one. So there's no references. Let's rename this to button index. Should be fine. And button index, and we'll have a previous index. We actually might be able to leverage. It's fine. Let's grab our button index and drag them on top of these references to replace them. And we'll set our previous index as well. We're going to have to create a new variable for that one, though. Previous index. Shove that up here. Sorry. I'm going to set the previous index to whatever the button index is. This check here, I don't think we need it, to be honest. It has no items. Not quite. Actually, sorry, I'm approaching this the wrong way. We don't need to copy all. It doesn't need to be nearly as complex. It's a 1 or 2 at this point. If we hit left, we don't need to worry about previous index either. Has no items, don't have to worry about that. We're basically just going to check for our delay. And we're going to clamp this to a max of 1 and 0, which is fine. And we're going to set this to, don't have to clamp. Don't even have to clamp, we're basically going to set this to 0. Yeah. Man, I'm getting hungry. I don't know if you guys can hear that on stream. My tummy is rumbling. Okay. Our button index, we want to change it to 0 on input left. And we'll just duplicate this and make use of that. This is input right. And we want to change it to 1. That is as simple as this needs to be. Everything's being limited by our widget phase. gosh, get rid of all of these extra gets. And what we want to do here is let's duplicate these down here. Grab references, not references, but set the target as our player controller and that input like so. And what we want here is a right gamepad, D-pad right, and a D key. D key. Okay, so now we should have some functionality here. Oh, and before we forget, there's a new feature I've been integrating into these menus. And I'll actually pull it from the shop menu. I'll try and explain it to you guys too. You may have noticed on our player select menu, an imperfection. And what does happen currently, because I haven't implemented my fix or my improvement, is that you'll press buy, for example, and before all the elements can animate out or the sequences are executed, if you hit up or down, you'll focus to the other buttons. To prevent this, what we set up is a initialize delay and a disable input, and these both fire into gates for each input. So we basically disable the ability to affect the menu once we've decided to exit. So as soon as we exit, we disable input. Calls this. It's pretty useful. I'm just going to copy that from our shop front and here. We do want to use those. And we're going to need some gates. And we're just going to move, control click, move those execution pins over so that basically our inputs have to check and pass through the gate. And only if the gate's open can we affect that input. Gates are probably the least used by me in terms of all the flow control type nodes. Anywho, initialize delay. We want to have, do we call it initialize delay? Find references. I don't think we call it anywhere. Nope. So right from our animation, before we execute our animation for launch, let's initialize the delay for the input. And I guess, you know what, let's get a better name for this. Initialize doesn't make sense. We want to have an input delay. And the input is 3.5. That delay speed actually should be based on our animation. Yeah, so that delay should be 0.5 now. 0.5, and we would just rig these up. And the initialized delay, these gates really only need to be in place, I believe, during the base phase of our shop. So what we can do is, by default, these gates are closed. Once we initialize, we want to open them. And once we disable input, which would be called right here, like immediately, we want to disable input. Grab these in here, set these to close. Our fourth input is going to be a confirm. But for now, what I want to do first, rather, is tighten this up a little bit. So I can just make this one. Um, focus either pack or item stash. We basically want to go into a bit of a setup here where we decide let's expose these. Border pack, and then what is this? Border stash. I'm surprised that name is available. So let's expose it as a variable. Grab our border stash and our border pack. So that's what it was called? Let's just click on this. Yeah, border pack. Oh, it's not a variable. That's why. So if we expose them as variables, we can adjust them as needed. So let's switch on integer. They're both going to route into here, and based on the button index, we don't need a default. It's always going to be either 1 or 2, or sorry, 0 or 1. We are going to, actually, real quick, I should just make a print string. And route those into here. And I just want to get a readout. A simple readout as to what button index we're on. But anyways, one thing we do want to set here on initialize design is probably a focused color. Maybe we could use that. Let's look at our brush color and opacity. Let me make sure I'm setting the right variable. On our border pack, we want to adjust our brush color. So brush color. If we set brush color, we get a linear color structure. Is this a linear color structure? It is, and it should be accepted. Beautiful. So I'm going to call this our, instead of item rank color, we're going to call this our focus color. And let's find references to it. Is it being used everywhere? Oh, it is. Okay, get rarity color. We don't need this function at all anymore. So get rarity color, let's get rid of that. The next function we use is get on item color. We take a look at it. We also don't need this. This is all old junk. We were kind of playing with this idea of having a Monster Hunter-esque rarity system for our item structure at one point, and this is the leftover garbage of that experiment. Item icon, or is that here? Get item icon, delete that. Now let's find focused color. Should be none. Beautiful. We want this to be set here, and on our initialize design function. Basically, what we want is depending on which character we're in, we want to set what that focused color is. So let's create it here so we can see how it looks, because we are layering this element on top of others with alphas. So it's safer to set it here and then add it to our palette and then adjust it. Ideally, we want something with some saturation and some sort of, color. Maybe that saturation's too much. 0.1 and max saturation and 0.2, I guess. Let's play with these values. For advanced, we want a green color. 0.2. That's fine. For Maya, we want something a little bit more. We don't want a true blue, but something in this cool area from green to blue. We don't want a pure blue value only. I'm going to grab these two, set this as a default, and what we're going to do here is our focused color will be set depending on which character is active. And now that we have the exact reference, we can dump them as desired. Right, perfect. So let's save, compile, go to the event graph, and here we are basically, if pack is selected, basically, if we're switching focus to our pack, what we want to do is, no matter which index is selected, we're updating both, because the states are going to change on both, because there's only 2 to change. So let's just duplicate these down here. And the focus color is going to be different depending on which index is selected. And the unfocused color will be the default we saved earlier. Yeah, so right here we can make a comment that says updates scroll box list background for focused section. Sure. Should be descriptive enough. Oh, and of course, we forgot to create the reference to the target. Okay, now that the blueprint is clean, let's play and check if that'll work. So, for advance, we should be able to focus. Yeah. So we're like, oh, which one do we want to edit? I don't know. Actually, what I'm thinking, we're going to need to confirm this. Let's see here. Also, let's take a look at how this looks if we have items. So, this is working quite nicely, but I don't love it. I don't love it. We can leverage the same code, but I'm going to apply a border to our border, more similar to the effect on our skill menu here, where we can have a sharp highlight around this border box on our skill tree, right? I think this is a lot more pleasing, if I'm going to be honest. And we should be able to use the same code. Let's close our junk shop front. And what I'm going to do here is element to the entire border. And you know what, our size box, this actually bothers me quite a bit. Let's make the padding around that actually even 4. I don't like the by default 4 on the sides and 2 on the top and bottom. I think that looks bad. So we have border storage and we have border pack list. Let's wrap this basically with another border. And immediately we get the exact same padding before. Don't like it. And there's still breathing room here, which is good, to be honest. Let's do the same here. Right click, wrap with border, and adjust the padding here up to 4. It created me a bit. Whoa, not 64. I think 6. Something a little bit chunkier would look kind of better. Just because we want this for emphasis, right? And we also probably want to add some space here. Yeah, our anchor is the top left. Let's move this over to 20. Maybe even 15 would look better, just so that we get a little bit more of a change here. Regarding the changes of these headers and footers, I ordinarily would want to just copy and paste our existing menu elements in, but I want to preserve the animation, and deleting these and replacing them would lose the animation. So I'm actually going to take a more delicate approach and copy and paste in the elements that we need. In any case, yeah, I'll make the animation probably last. So we have our border. So let's call this border pack highlight. AHL for highlight. We're going to make this a variable, and we're going to do the same for our other one. Call this border stash highlight. And now, instead of our, actually the first thing we should do is, by default, let's make the brush color totally invisible. Brush color, 0 this out. And now over here, instead of instead of our border pack and border stash, for the scroll box, we want to adjust our pack highlights and our border stash highlight. And these are the ones we want to edit. Beautiful. Those take. And pretty much that should make things fully functional. We just want to 0 this out. And we're updating the updates border highlights for our focus section. And by default, right after we create everything, we want to apply focus to one of them. And I think probably if we have an input delay, we might as well just put that right here. It's going to get a little squirrely with all the execution pins, but as long as we know where they're going, it should be fine. So let's take a look at that in action. Yeah, we got our border highlight, so we can see what's in focus. The only issue is it is barely recognizable, especially in a darker environment. Um, that looks funny. Yeah, everything else is animating. Lucky for us. A simple fix. Well, the simplest fix would be to grab these three elements. Let's copy and paste them. Right here. Basically, as soon as we play our exit animation, we would just exit or set up that color to be invisible again, so it doesn't look awkward. So everything's animating out nicely. And we should be able to edit both of those just like that. On our initialized design, we probably can just be current and grab those appropriate colors. So if we compile, save, and play, let's grab Maya this time. Cool. How neat is that? Reads well. If we exit, doesn't look awkward. What we also want to do is next apply our this delay here should actually be retriggerable. Go to right click, find a retriggerable delay. It can be set for 0.15 as well, that's fine. I'm just going to replace this with this. And what we're going to do here is just Control W and do the same for this side. We can also branch, well, not also branch, but we can branch again here and set up a button index check. And basically, if it's equal to one or the other, so if we're already at 0, or if we're already at 1, we can make use of a kind of like an error sound effect. Do we already have sound effects being called? No. So what I'm going to do is, I guess, grab Junk Shop Front. That should have references to sound effects with custom events. Things like cursor noise are fine. We can copy that in here. And we could have another one also. Error sound effects. Whoops. Doing that all wrong. We want a custom event. Rename this to error SFX. Place sound to we want. And I have a sound in mind I want to use. Sort of the subtle error. There we go. And now we can make use of error sound effects, and we basically call that if we're already at our current position. We know this is working, we don't need that print string. But what I do want to have set up is probably a more positive sound effect. Basically the cursor, play cursor noise. And this would get called, sorry, not from true, from the false. It would route in like so for both sides. And the reason we're doing it here as opposed to before these both combine and route in is because when we apply our initial focus with this execution pin, we want to do it after the sound effect. That way we don't get a beep, a cursor noise when we are just setting up and initializing the interaction. So now if we, hit here, we are working correctly. The difference between the delays here, retriggerable versus non, is it basically forces this setup to work like an on release. If we did switch it back to a normal delay, 0.1, see the normal delay. I don't love that. So the way to set this up is to use both and drive those based on where in the branch we are checking. Essentially, I believe the solution to this problem is that we want to check we want to check our position almost immediately, much earlier in our tree. And the delays are now part of either or. So for the false path, we would want it to route through delay. So it's kind of a short time after it is pressed, and for the error sound effect, it would be routed through true. Just move that out of the way. Help things be a little bit more readable. Okay, and let's do the same here. For false, we are going to delay, play our cursor sound, and for retriggerable, it'll function sort of like on release. save and compile. I should save my other actors or other assets as well. So hop into here. Don't love that. I don't want to solve this now because I don't want to spend too much more time on this kind of subtle kind of logic. But the way to solve this, just for your own information, would be to leverage our previous index, and like we had set up for other menus, we would set the previous index to whatever the current position is on these execution chains, and then if the previous index is equal to our current index, we wouldn't use the repeated error sound effect. Only if it was, if it's changing, we would not use the error sound effect. But if it is the same, we would use the error sound effect. But for now, I'll just leave it as is. I'll clean that up later. What I want to set up next is what is essentially the clicked events. This is going to be our last gate, and it's also going to be the last item we unlock and disable for phase 1 of the menu. And in terms of input, should be pretty obvious. We want to use the D-pad down. And we want to use the spacebar. Whoops, not there. That would be a huge error. We want to set that up here on our condition for our input. And basically, on execution, we would immediately want to set our phase to phase 2, which would be a new sequence down here. Adjust button index in scroll box. And we would also let's set that in place. We set the widget phase to phase 1. It is 1, right? Yeah. We should also get a confirm sound effect. Let's make a new event here too. Let's call this cursor SFX. And make a new custom event, and we'll call it confirm SFX. And let's select our confirm noise. If I could type, geez, confirm. UI confirm, and we'll click that through. So our confirm SFX gets toggled, and we're going to need a Boolean. Alright, well first we're going to need this exact same switch. Based on the button index. And depending on what it is, we're going to set a new variable. Well, we don't need a new one. We have this one existing. Focused inventory button stash. Hold on, where's this being used? Let's see. Are we gonna need this later? We set it down here on our onClick event. Inventory button hovered. This is probably, I'm gonna say, gonna get reused. Let's rename this and call it is stash focused. And it's going to be true or false depending on 1 or 2. Is stash focused. And if index 1 is focused, which is our stash, let's label those up here, make some more visual notes. Focuses pack. Focuses stash. Okay. Is stash focused. It's set true during this execution. Phase 0 clicked. Okay. And from here we would, so what I would like to do is basically have a focused color where we adjust the color kind of in a lighter hue or lighter saturation, and a selected, or it's the full version of that desired color. I think that could be more or less set up here. Now, as for what those colors would be, we would... Do we need to set them dynamically? That's the question. I think so. Let's create a... Let's move this up here. Focus color 0. We'll call this confirmed color. Confirmed color. And let's hop into our initialize design, and we're going to have to set our confirmed color as well. And to be honest, I kind of like those colors for confirmed. I mean, if we grab it, we could bump them up slightly. I think the green could get bumped up, yeah. But here, yes, let's set this at 0.5 and 3.5. I don't love it. Yeah, this will have to do. .5 and 0.75. So on event begin play, We immediately set our referenced colors for our theme depending on which character is accessing the stash. And then, oh yes, these need to be hooked up into our player controller. Because right now they are looking for a button being pressed, but it doesn't know which player controller we're looking for. Sequence has no valid output. I get it. It's fine for now, though. And let's set up our colors for focused or confirmed. So similar to above, our confirmed color will be set as depending on which case we're using. And we're going to want to keep the unfocused one totally transparent. Now the next step is going to be our back button. I want to make sure we can get back out of these phases. So we're going to make use of another basically the switch on phase again. Should be able to route those up. Oh, you know what? Let's stack upwards. We have a nice layout going on here. Basically, this is for phase 0. Let's shove these guys over. And if we're on phase 1, what we want to do first is basically set this to phase 0 again. You know what, let's put our retriggable delay first. And we probably want a sound play sound 2D. Let's get the sound effects for it back. UI, I think. Maybe UI underscore back. Good God, I have to search for what it's called. Let's see here. My God, there's so many. Oh, of course. Silly me. This should be an easier list to look through. Explosions, don't really care. Generic spells, don't care. Sound back, that's the one. Okay, so for 0 we would go through here. And if we're in phase 1, we definitely want to set our widget phase to 0. But also, we want to reset this. And so we can do a branch and this is interesting. How do we want to approach this? We can branch and set the is stash focused, and using that we'll know which border highlight to adjust. And we don't even need to, we're going to need way more space. I wanted to be cool with this, but looks like we have to break how neat our blueprint was. Let's go. Okay, so if stash was focused and we're trying to revert back, we want the stash color to be adjusted and the false, we want the path color to be adjusted. And we want to adjust those both to wonder if we can just leverage these. Slash highlight and border highlight. We want to leverage or change them to the focused color because we're not inside of that index anymore. For the inventory buttons, we're going to actually use, instead of a button index, we're going to use a inventory button index. So we're going to have two integers tracking the position throughout the menu. What we do, because of that, we should be fine, I think, regarding our focused position here. So let's test that out. Get here, we have our focused section. If we jump into here, I see. I gave myself the wrong input. Not D-pad button down. D-pad face button down. Oh, excuse me. Gamepad down. That would do it. And you know what's not even down? It's bottom. Excuse me. Gamepad face button bottom. That should allow us to enter into this phase and okay, so we're in here, and if we hit back, we just exit the widget. Not exactly what we want. So why is that? If we're in phase 2, or phase 1 rather, which does get set on button clicked, we come up here to the gate, and no delay may be the cause of that. Okay, so as you can see, we are focusing the opposite, or no matter which one we're confirmed into, our focus is reset to the previous, or the stash instead. So there's probably a miswiring up over here. This is the culprit. This is sort of an either-or type deal. Beautiful. Yeah. So I guess we're a little bit over the usual stream length, and this is a perfectly sad song to end the stream on. Yeah, everybody, thanks for watching and tuning in for this development stream. We broke down the skybox and how the transitions work with proceeding from different day cycles from the morning all the way to night. And then we also began working on reintegrating our item stash functionality back into the game. So, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe to get notifications and, basically help support our effort, feel free. It's greatly appreciated from everyone on the team. And I'm going to try to do a night stream tonight and do a basic breakdown on how the item stash is working, because we are going to make it a little bit more advanced. Anyways, guys, until next time, thanks for watching. And because I don't know how to end the stream, I'll just say bye.